Welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. Well, we see a crisis is pending in Europe, and as usual, the powers that be want to use the crisis to make more government. And so now what we see in the Wall Street Journal last Friday is that Europe's top banker urges new union. Well, it turns out that in order to save the problem there in Europe of all these countries going into default is a banking union. That's his words. Well, that's a euphemism for central bank. So what they're trying to do is to form a central bank of Europe to bring about more government as a solution to already too much government. And it's their way of uniting ultimately all the economic systems of Europe under one umbrella. Another thing that we see in the Wall Street Journal is leftist narrows gap in Mexico race. Well, it turns out that the Mexican presidential candidate, Andres Obrador, they call a leftist. Actually, he is the candidate of a coalition. He is, by the way, mayor of New York City. They don't call him that, but that's really his position. Is a coalition of the Maoist Labor Party, the Convergence Party, and the Party of the Democratic Revolution, which includes the old Communist Party and a few other socialist parties. They already control 5 of the 32 governorships in Mexico and 24% of the senators in the Senate. And now he's in second place running for the presidency. Came within a hair's breadth of being elected president last time. We'll see what happens this time. But you have to ask the question, is Mexico going communist? A lot of the revolutionaries that you see in your movies from Hollywood and other things were communists. When they went in and had revolutions in Mexico, a lot of what they did was never put into your history books or in Hollywood or television dramas. But a lot of them were communists. They killed priests. They killed nuns. They burnt down or confiscated church property, etc. I understand there's a movie out right now on it. I can't remember the title, but that's in defense of those sorts of things, not in opposition to. In the Financial Times, there's the headline, Rockefellers and Rothschilds Unite. And apparently 2 banking firms, financial firms of the Rockefellers and Rothschilds are getting together to give the Rothschilds a foothold in the United States. That's kind of laughable because they got a foothold in the United States with August Belmont back in the 1830s, and they've been here all along. So this idea that the Rothschilds don't have a part to play in the financial circles of the United States is ridiculous. And besides, this is formalizing something that's been going on for years anyway. I like the way the USA Today expresses things. It says, X marks spacecraft success. Subtitled, Privately Funded Dragon Capsule Returns to Earth. Then they say, NASA's new era of privately funded spacecraft to make deliveries to the International Space Station, etc. What is it they don't understand about government contracts? These space organizations were put together, yes, they were funded privately, but in order to take advantage of government contracts. So in essence, they are not private in the sense that you and I think of privatization. They are simply private organizations that are going to do the same thing that NASA always did, except NASA's going to pay more for it. But it's supposedly making us think that this is a private thing that we have to deal with. Another one is China buys up Spain's assets. Well, you go into the article and you find out that, well, really, they're buying up the assets in Brazil and taking over some of the power grids in Brazil that were put together by Spain. Other things that China is doing besides moving into areas like that is buying up property and businesses in the United States. They are, for instance, soaking up a lot of the oil leases and things of that nature through proxies. One of the things they recently did was spend over $1 billion to buy one of the largest movie distributing companies in the United States that owns all these theaters that you go and watch your movies in. And what you're going to see is indirect control, therefore, over the movies that will be made. They won't have direct control by buying out Paramount or DreamWorks or that sort of thing. They'll just own the theaters. So if they don't like a movie, then they won't put it in their theaters. That's simple. If they like a movie, if they promote it, then you see that's the thing that will be made in Hollywood. Hollywood will start to make movies the Chinese want in their theaters. That's simple. So you'll see propaganda even worse than what it's been in your theaters from now on. One of the things that I think we have to talk about to get people to understand, and I've said this before, is never underestimate the corruption inside the Republican Party. The state of Louisiana has just demonstrated that over again with the draconian measures they used against Paulite delegates to the state convention, calling the police in to take an arrest and throw out the legitimate individuals who were elected by the majority of the delegates to be the chairman of the convention and a number of other things. The establishment Republicans just simply went to the police and had these duly elected people thrown out with bodily injury, by the way. This is the sort of thing that's been going on in more than one state. It's not just Louisiana. They've called the police in whenever they've lost control of convention in a couple of other states. These sorts of things are becoming noticeable now because of the widespread size and breadth of the Ron Paul movement. The problem is that we don't see any coordinated effort on a national scale to do something about this problem. It has been a problem for many, many years. It was obvious during the Goldwater candidacy. It was obvious in the first move for Ronald Reagan during the Nixon years, and that sort of thing. And it's been ongoing up and down in various states over a period of time against anyone who is a constitutionalist. And you see in the Democrat Party, they may fight amongst themselves. The communists work within the Democrat Party, the socialists work within the Democrat Party, or they may put their own nominal candidate up. But the bulk of their candidacies that belong to the Communist Party or the Socialist Party work within the Democrat Party. They call themselves Democrats because they want to get elected. And so they have to use a mainstream party to be successful. And then they put a Communist Party candidate over here to give the Democrat Party the look of moderation, because these are the real leftists. But really the leftists work within the Democrat Party. Now, again, they fight amongst each other, but they all have the same goal: socializing the United States towards a new world order, a one world government. All socialist and communist units are internationalists. They always work for a world parliament. Of course, they want to run it. Now, in the Republican Party, that's not true. They fight amongst each other primarily because of the goal, not because of who wants to rule. In the Democrat Party, it's, I want to be the big cheese. I want to be the big socialist. But in the Republican Party, the goal is the thing that they fight over, because what you see is a facade of being conservative. But whenever a constitutionalist comes along and wants to do it in a constitutional manner, and if they get the majority, you start to see some strange things happening, such as we've seen this year in regard to the various candidacies, particularly the one of Ron Paul's. And doing all sorts of rules changing at the last minute, altering the meetings at the last minute, even where they're going to be, all sorts of shenanigans and tactics to try and get around any constitutionalist from becoming nominated within the Republican Party or holding a position within the Republican Party, a national committeeman, a state chairman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in some areas, they've been able to overcome this. But in some places where it's been so corrupt, it isn't so corrupt of preference, but absolute violent corruption like we've seen in Louisiana. This is becoming a real problem. It's been a problem. It's just becoming manifested now openly. And until there's enough people that can stay the course and organize to do something about it, it will continue to be a problem. There's only one way to solve it, really, and that's to take a look at the John Birch Society as to how we go about organizing people, educating people, and that always leads to more individuals that get involved in the political process. We do not, as an organization, do this, but those that study with us, those that get organized with us on their own, get involved in the political process. We recommend this to you. Until next week, we'll see you then.